Kevin Hollinrake, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We were just talking before in the break there, saying as many people, basically what's been going through your head this morning, as it will be for many people, is that this is a service that you yourself use, and wondering about how safe one feels on British transport at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking, totally shocking, the whole thing, devastating for the people involved, both directly and the people who witnessed it and were in fear of their own lives. So, and wonderful job of the emergency services, of course, and the train driver seems to have done all the right things. But yeah, I mean, I think I've just put my daughter, 18-year-old daughter, back on a train going back north along the East Coast Main Line, because we've got to go on. You've got to carry on. We can't let these people, whatever their motivations, prevent us from going about our daily lives. But terrible set of incidents, and the press conference. There's even more questions after the press conference. Really, who on earth would do something like this?
Well, does that the superintendent there saying that there is no reason at this stage to believe that this is terrorism? They're not treating it at the moment as a terrorist incident. Does that surprise you?
Yeah, it does, because it's the first thing you think about when you hear two men who do. That's what we'd obviously heard last night, attacking all these people, and it seemed to be the kind of thing that you associate with a terror-related offence. So there'll be some motive, some reason behind this, and there'll be lots of speculation about what those reasons are. But we just got to wait, let the police do the job. At least, there was lots of speculation on Twitter this morning about what it was on my Twitter feed, but at least it's good to know it was not what people thought, some kind of terror-related offence. But
has become a bit of a problem there, hasn't it, in terms of with incidents like this? I mean, you'll have seen, as I've seen this morning on X in particular, and social media, the sort of speculation that happens on this stuff now, and indeed, I mean, frankly, deeply racist stuff as well.
Yeah,
you'll have seen.
Terrible. And there's no excuse for that ever. And horrendous.
People talking about the need to re-emigrate people, to deport people, even though, as we've seen now, these guys were British nationals.
Based on their skin colour. I mean, it's just appalling. And there is, I guess we thought racism had disappeared in this country, but it's just been concealed, I guess. The latent racism seems to be because of events and because of people are concerned, of course. There's a wide concern now in society. I think those deeply racist people who want to see this country simply an all-white nation seem to be back and emboldened by the current climate, and that can't be right.
Well, your Shadow Justice Secretary did talk about white faces in Handsworth, of course, Kevin.
He did do that, but I think there is concerns about integration. That's the biggest issue with this. I don't think most right-thinking people have an issue with somebody of a different skin colour living in their street or their town or the village or whatever. I certainly do not. But people do worry when you go to certain parts of the country.
But I suppose language like that could enable the sort of racism that you're worried about.
Yeah, we've got to be careful, but also we've got to make sure.
Robert should have been more careful.
Well, also we can't be afraid of talking about some of the issues we have in our communities. Now, at one point, I was a candidate for Dewsbury. That's one of the most divided places on racial and religious lines in this country. Bradford the same, Leicester, Birmingham. Yeah. We must have a situation where people integrate properly. That's the issue that Rob Jenrick was talking about, and we shouldn't be afraid to talk about those things.
But is there a danger when you're starting to talk about seeing the number of white faces in a place versus people of another skin colour, that it just enables that sort of racism?
There is a danger, and we've got to be careful what we say, make sure we couch it in the right terms, and be clear about what we're talking about. So this Rob is not a racist, but we want to make sure that people understand what he was saying is parts of Birmingham, like parts of other places in the UK, have become monocultural, mono-religious. That's a real worry.
In terms of going back to the story of the moment, which is this, and what we've seen on that train, there was an extraordinary stat I noticed this morning from the TSA union saying that 95% of rail staff have faced threats of violence over the past 12 months, and 40% of their members claim to have been exposed to someone with a weapon. Do we need to think more seriously about security on our transport system?
We do, in terms of making sure we're policed properly. I mean, we've committed to put 10,000 more police officers on our streets, I think, and to make sure we restore things back to their ability to control.
What's gone wrong in Britain? If that's true, that 40% say that they've been exposed, of trained staff, so trained guards and so on, people working in the cafe or whatever it happens to be, They've been exposed to a weapon during their job. What's gone wrong?
Terrible. No, I mean, there's some cultural issues that are happening in our society. There's a feeling, an understandable feeling. There's a disintegration. It's not just about that particular thing. The fear of knife crime presented with a weapon, I mean, it's horrendous. But also we've got things like rough sleeping, we've got things like shoplifting, we've got antisocial behaviour, you've got litter, there's a real fear in our communities that the society is disintegrating, and we need to make sure we need to restore the law and order, and not just in terms of people commit crimes, but people respecting our communities, respecting our people who work on our trains, all those kind of things, our people work in shops, all these things. There is a fear that we're going down the wrong track, and I fear that too. But I think we can get back on the right track quickly if we have the right leader in place.
Some of that fear is hysterical, though, isn't it? I mean, some of the fear that we see online being talked about, and we heard people talking about civil war, we heard Elon Musk talking about civil war and so on. That's nonsense, isn't it?
Listen, it is nonsense today, but we need to make sure we get things right.
Well, so you think that civil war might not be nonsense tomorrow?
Of course, I don't think we'll end up a civil war in this country, but we've got to make sure we make the right decisions on how this country is run. I've just finished a book now by Ed Hussein called Among the Mosques, and there are he's a Muslim himself, but he goes around all the mosques in the UK, and there is amongst certain communities there is a deliberate approach that wants to separate their own communities from the rest of society, and I think those things are extremely unhealthy. So that there will be very undesirable outcomes unless we get to a situation where everybody respects the culture of this country in terms of the foundations of it: freedom of speech, equality of the sexes. But
we've also got to make sure our politicians and people in public life are speaking in a measured way, haven't we? And one of your Conservative peers, Toby Young, tweeted last night, quote, "If Britain's drift towards civil conflict continues, the next phase will be physical. When politics ceases to settle grievances, they're settled by other means," warned Professor David Betts and Professor Michael Rainsborough. And he posted a link to an article from those people which predicts civil conflict and violence and suggests that civil war could be on the way. Is that the sort of thing that a Tory peer ought to be posting online?
Listen, I don't think we are there today. I'm not saying, and I don't suppose Toby Young was just saying that we are there today. But we've got to make sure we have. There are some common values and common history that in this country: tolerance, respect, equality of the sexes, equality of people of different sexualities, all those kind of things. And we've got to make sure that we're all in the same place in terms of that being the society that we want.
Are you suggesting, therefore, that civil conflict could be on the way?
I don't think we're there anywhere near that today. I think Elon Musk is wrong, and I think anybody who thinks we are there today, I think they're wrong. But
surely we're nowhere near it at any point.
At any point?
Civil conflict in Britain, Kevin? Really? Are things that bad?
I don't think we'll go there. But I think
Toby Young seems to.
Well, I don't think he's saying that. He said, I haven't read the piece, so let
he's
me
tweeting a link to an
it.
article which suggested it could be on the way. And I'm just saying to you that he's a Conservative peer. He's got the Conservative whip. There would have been a time, I think, not so long ago, where he'd lose the whip for posting something like that. That's sort of hysteria, predicting violence on the basis of ethnic or religious divides. That's hysterical, isn't it?
I think it would be a big mistake not to confront some of the realities we have in our society.
Sure, you can do that and not predict civil conflict.
I'm not sure he is doing that, but and that's not what I'm predicting. But I do want to make sure we don't simply sweep these issues under the carpet. We've got to be willing to talk about some of the problems we have in our society.
Civil conflict, actually, does it not risk creating exactly the sort of violence that you, and I assume he and others, would say they want to avoid?
You think it's more likely that we get there because he talks about the dangers of getting there?
I think that if you increase the political temperature talking about civil war or civil violence or civil conflict, when there is very little evidence at all to suggest that it's on its way or here or anywhere close, I think, yes, that could be a bigger problem.
I haven't read his particular posts. I'm very happy to read it. I know Toby. I don't think he'd be saying that is where we are today. What I think he is saying, we need to make sure that we make good choices now in terms of making sure everybody understands what this country stands for and is proud of its past and is optimistic about its future.
What makes you think that people aren't proud of our country?
Well, some people...
I mean, so it's their right, isn't it, as well? I mean, if they don't want to be proud, that's up to them.
Yes, but you don't want that to embed itself within an entire community.
Toby Young doesn't sound very proud of our country right now if he's posting articles saying Britain's drift towards civil conflict continues.
Well, I'm sure Toby, like the rest of us, is proud of many things about our country, and we should be. We should be optimistic about the country today, where it's past, it's present, and its future. But there are some issues we need to confront. I think simply ignoring them or pretending they don't exist is not the right thing to do.
Just finally, it is a year to the day, I think, since your leader became leader, Kemi Badenoch. The polling has got worse since you became leader. When can the Conservative Party expect to turn it round?
Soon. I think we're on the right track. I mean, of course, the polls out where we want to be, Lewis. We both know that. But Kemi took a certain approach. Of course, she could have come out straight out the traps when she was first elected as leader and said, "Okay, I'm going to do all these things." But she deliberately said, "No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to not make it and make sure this time we don't make any undeliverable, unfundable commitments. We're going to take our time to make sure we manage the economy right, so we have a stronger economy, stronger borders." Now, the conference a couple of weeks ago, we had a fantastic conference where she announced how we would control our borders, leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, for example, have those stronger borders. And crucially, how we're going to have a stronger economy by constraining spending. But the only party that's interested in constraining spending.
Still listening?
Yes, I do. If you look at
Kemi's, were they?
Well, if you talk, well, they were listening in Hendon last night, this week, where we won a very significant win against a council seat. Well, it wasn't the Senate, but it was a council seat, a very important council seat, which every other party threw everything they'd got at those elections, and we won. That election we won. But we have much work to do. But, the reality is, following conference, Kemi's personal approval ratings increased significantly. I expect over time that to be reflected in the polls. We've got an awful long road to walk in terms of making sure we get what we need to get. But I'm very confident we will get it.
Kevin Hollinrake there, the Conservative Party chair, revelling in his win in Barnet. And, congratulations on that. It's Kevin Hollinrake there. We'll have lots more to come on the appalling events that we saw in Cambridge. We'll be talking to the local MP in Huntingdon as well, one of Kevin Hollinrake's colleagues.